Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us for this important conversation. Think Global, Impact Local, Perspectives from Shanghai and Beijing. My name is Karina Hendren, and I am the Senior Associate for Global Stakeholder Engagement here at Out and Equal. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. So this notion of think global, impact local came from multiple conversations that we've had with our partners in China who are working towards greater LGBTQ workplace inclusion. So if you joined, and maybe some of you have joined our China webinar last month, you might remember that we spoke a lot about the importance of contextualizing certain themes and ideas so that they can have a greater impact. And we hope that you will leave today's conversation with a greater understanding and some tangible ways to move LGBTQ workplace inclusion forward, particularly in the Chinese context. And we have a great panel with us today, and I will turn it over to them shortly to introduce themselves. But before I do that, I want to let all panelists, participants know tonight to feel free to join in at any moment with any thoughts or questions in our Q&A box, because we do want to hear from you. At the end, we'll read through some of the comments and questions we get and address them as a panel. And also, this webinar will be recorded and will be sent out to those who RSVP'd, as well as be available on Out and Equal's website. Now, I will turn it over to today's panelists to introduce themselves. Jimmy, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Karina. My name is Jimmy. I work for IBM for almost like 12 years, no, 13 years. And after joining IBM, I started to look for the possibilities to start the LGBT job, because the year I joined IBM, 2006, was the year IBM adopted the LGBT index in the intranet system. That's how got my attention. And now I'm leading the LGBT ERG here in China, and as well as in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And that's basically my daily job is a pet attorney. Okay, back to you.
All right, and whoever wants to go next.
Nain, go ahead.
Would you like to go? Okay, I can go ahead. Hi, everyone. I'm Nain Ren from Beijing LGBT Center. I'm working for the Workplace Diversity Initiative here, which is a comprehensive workplace project. And we are also working very closely with both Charlene and Jimmy, Shanghai Pride, and also IBM in China to promote DNI. Really nice to meet you all today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Charlene Liu. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am based in Shanghai. My previous job background experiences are in semiconductor as well as consulting. I would like to say that right now my gay job is really to raise awareness and promote visibility for the LGBTQ communities in Shanghai. And we work very closely with our peers in Beijing, such as Naing and Jimmy, to do that as well. And workplace diversity, excuse me, and inclusion is very important to us. So this is why we really need everyone to work together, including companies in China as well as around the world, to promote more of this visibility.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation that we'll be having. So I guess to start us off, it would be great to hear from each of you what are some of kind of the common themes that you've been hearing lately in terms of LGBTQ D&I in both Beijing and Shanghai.
I think I can go first on this. The common themes right now, especially during this period of pandemic and even post-pandemic period, right, in China, I think we notice a lot more companies who are willing to to talk about inclusion and talk about what diversity means and bring up the conversation at the workplace. So we have seen actually more companies reaching out to us, which is quite a good sign. Although having said that, some companies do have the reservations because they think that, you know, it's about hiring process, like, oh, we're not hiring now, and therefore we don't want to look for, we don't need diversity. But actually, we think that that may not be the case, right? If you want to talk about diversity, it's really about who are already in the workplace. Like, how are you going to help your employees to excel, to be themselves, and also to for the company culture to be more inclusive. At least that's what I've been seeing for the last 3-4 months.
Great, thank you.
I think I can echo Shilin. Nowadays, especially corporations, the big corporations, MNCs are talking about the diversity inclusion in China more and more. And I saw a lot, actually a big change, since 2006, no, 2009. 2009 was the first year IBM adopted launched the ERG in China. And following that, there was Goldman Sachs. And after a few years, and more corporations are emerging. And now even some local enterprises, like some local enterprises need to go to the global market, are talking about it too. So it is promising. And then in the meantime, a lot of questions they're raised are talking about, like how they can do that. So that actually that actually reach a question that I'll throw to Naing, because she encountered this kind of question a lot. So you, Naing.
Thank you, Jimmy, for curing me. So yeah, I've seen a lot about like the multinational corporates. They're already very interested, and they're thinking about the best strategy to start the conversation. So sometimes we help them with, for example, using, actually, like we talk about intersectionality, and we usually say that's what comes out. I think because of a lot of different contexts, actually talking about gender equality in general is a lot more easier, because we have the All China Women's Federation, and it's kind of a political correctness to talk about equal pay in China. So, and also the All Women Federation, the All China Women Federation, that actually promote women's employment in China, working together with even state-owned companies and also the public institutions, which are very difficult if it's not, if they do not push for that. So because of all this context, so sometimes we talk with corporates about maybe we can start from talking about gender equality, and then we can just kind of redefine gender in that process. Or we can talk about sexual harassment and Me Too, which is a hot topic in China now. And then from there, we can talk about harassment, not only between different sexes, but also like between same-sex people. And then we come to LGBTQ. So that are some of the ways that we use. And also for the Chinese companies, it's a little similar. And for them to start the conversation is so much more difficult. But right now, I think the trend is changing. We are working with ByteDance. They are very, very active internally. And we really want to, in the future, try to see what we can do. We're also trying to talk with other internet companies. So like internet companies, they might be the first ones who will take the step.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much for all of your answers. So this question is kind of, and maybe a few of you alluded to it in your answer, but kind of going back to the theme of today's conversation, like the thinking globally, impact locally, kind of how can companies use this idea to localize these, a lot of times, global policies to the context in both Beijing and Shanghai? And if possible, are there any tips that you have to localize these policies and ideas? I know Naying just spoke a little bit about kind of collaborating with other organizations to kind of take it at a more intersectional lens, but wondering if anyone had any additional examples to kind of build on.
Well, we will always try to play the safe card, and the like Naying mentioned, like the political correctness, and sometimes it's like from corporation perspective, we're always trying to keep focus on the talent management. And when talking about like all the issues, like diversity inclusion is about talent. It's about the how the corporations can actually using their power to create a workplace, to inclusive workplace that can best attract and retain talent. That's what we are always been doing, and then we try to avoid something that might cause the attractions by the some authorities. And also we always trying to keep it within the business world. Although we work with the Shanghai Pride, we work with the Beijing LPG Center a lot, but we still like even that we always try to keep in the business world, because it's kind of like, let's sit down and talk business. This is the theme every time we're talking about.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jimmy, and I think we all appreciate, especially in mainland China, on how we run things. But I really have to say this, right? If you're a leader out there, if you're someone who's a global leader or even or local leader, right? Take that bold step. And I can't say this more, because why? I've seen companies, I've seen businesses, they take that bold step, and maybe one person, maybe a group of people in the company, they say, okay, I want to talk about this, and we want to make D&I a part of our culture, and LGBTQ, the topic, is also part of this conversation. Yes, we do face a lot of challenges, whether it's in the community or in companies, but we have seen really success stories for just taking the bold step. It's like if we don't take that step, you don't know. If you don't ask, you won't get an answer. I'm sure there are ways of working around things, implementing policies, or even starting ERGs. I think we should all overcome the fear of if we talk about it, then there'll be repercussions. But if we don't talk about it, then you will miss a lot of opportunities out there, whether it's about hiring, whether it's about best practices, whether it's about the company's bottom line.
Yeah, I want to share a case. We have a company that we work with both last year and this year. They really wanted to try to do LGBT D&I last year for the first time. And they were also kind of afraid, but also like not sure what to do. So somehow they found us, they trusted us, and it's really amazing. And what their global side did was that they have a senior leader who is out in their company. So he was based in the West Coast in the United States. So he flew to China and was there for the event. That made a lot of change, because like a lot of the staff at the local level, they've never seen him, and they didn't really have the opportunity to. So they're really excited about like the big boss coming here. Also, he's out and he shared his story for the first time about him and his partner. It was really lovely. And then the local level, they work with us, the local community, because they're based in Beijing. We are in Beijing, one of the biggest LGBT organizations in Beijing. So they want to be very, from the start, deeply connected to the community. So all together, we put together this event. Their staff, their ERG group, all allies, they come to help. They bought a big rainbow cake. There were rainbow everywhere. So last year in May, it was a wonderful event, and that kickstarted the whole company's conversation about LGBT DNI. And this year they are doing it again and even more in a more like sophisticated manner. So yeah, that's a story that I want to share, and that's just reflects how working together, the global level, the local level, the community side, all together, we can create changes.
Yeah, that's a great story, Naing. I think for us and a lot of us here, we can learn from that. That if it's a global MNC, right, with the HQ somewhere else, and if they can, or the management level can take the first step and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to show everybody that this can be done. We can talk about this. Of course, it helps if someone from management is from LGBTQ community, but then, you know, an ally helps just as well. So having them come over here, or even, you know, having someone in China, management in China, or to step up and say, you know, let's talk about this. I think it helps a lot, because besides having ERGs or community or individuals voicing out, it's also important that we have a top-down approach.
Yeah,
I
really want to echo that, because in like a top-down approach is a lot of companies actually using the top-down approach, because, you know, sometimes it's especially for some corporation, they have the kind of like the because the culture here, and they're kind of like a little bit reluctant to do so. Even the like HR department is trying to do this. So from top-down approach, to make sure that the local management team have the responsibility and have the kind of like the push to do that. Sometimes it only needs a push from the top level. And especially nowadays, the from bottom up approach for some for the culture here, a lot of people are just so afraid of to come out, because sometimes it will influence the whole career for him or her or they. So sometimes it's the so it's important for the top-down approach, and also if it is when we create the culture, and there might be some cases like from the bottom of you can hear the voice from the bottom.
Also, another thing that I like to point out is many times we think, or rather the companies think, that we cannot talk about things like, we can't even say LGBTQ. I was at an on-site event last week, and it was more about gender diversity, but because globally, the company is very inclusive, right? So LGBTQ inclusion is part of it. But the speaker at the event was told not to mention LGBTQ, which is like, it's just 5 letters. But it also and they would say, oh, we just cannot say it. But, you know, it's many times we think we cannot say it, but actually we can. And if you say it, I mean, then you have to stand up for it. So it's about everybody in the company willing to talk about it. And then it goes back to leadership, right? How is the leader going to like get everybody together and say, okay, this is what we stand for. We are all about inclusion, and inclusion is, inclusion, age inclusion, or ethnic minority inclusion. It's all part of it.
Definitely, and that's very much related to kind of my next question. Do any of you have some examples of working with folks that might be headquartered outside of China, and how you can help them to understand that they can have a speech and say LGBTQ, or like can talk about these issues, or can kind of draft these different policies?
I do think it varies. It's really depend on the different organizations, and sometimes some organizations are facing client-facing organizations, or maybe facing the end users. They the big tech company, the most rich company in the world. So they have the policy. I won't mention the name. You know the name, and they will talk about it inside the organization all the time. But they will not brand it, because it's still like they have a lot of considerations, but it doesn't hurt them from talking about it. And I know that. Maybe they are the company, at least in Beijing, is the company that provide the most appealing eco benefits in Beijing. So it really depends on a different and how you handle it. But I do think like no matter how or what you want to do, and there are a lot of resources outside, and I know that like when we first trying to do it, it's kind of like in the dark, and we need to seek guidance from global or some other parts of the world. I mean inside the organization, and then slowly we learn about that there are a lot of local organizations that best understanding the local practices here, and then that's actually we really need to utilize all the resources. I know that we back in the days we've been working with the Shanghai Pride a lot, and we still have really good relationship, and with the Shanghai Pride, and then now because a lot of our work is actually in Beijing, so we started to work with Naing a couple of years ago. So try to seek the different resources, and then they can provide maybe even better approaches than the sometimes if you just working as a community, working as the get help sometimes.
Yeah, I also want to mention that actually the headquarters size, I think I've seen that conversation a lot, because after coming back, starting to work at the Beijing LG Center, I actually talked a lot with both the headquarters side and the local side a lot, the same company sometimes. I think the global side usually have a high respect for the local context, which I respect a lot. I think in a world of globalization, to have this awareness to respect the local situation is really, really wonderful. But on the other hand, I do encourage, as Jimmy mentioned, the companies to sometimes reach out to local organizations who know the community better, because the local people who are executing the LGBT DNI or the DNI in general does not necessarily know LGBT sometimes enough, that they can really make that judgment about like the risk. And usually the risks are overrated, and that kind of stop a lot of things from happening, because it seems dangerous, so we have to be like super careful. So that could actually stop us from wonderful opportunities. So I do encourage that maybe there can be a balance between these two perspectives. So on the one hand, we have to respect the local, we have to respect the context there, but on the other hand, actually the headquarters usually still a very, very important force in promoting for the LGBT DNI and many different local level. So we also encourage the headquarters sometimes to lean in more to help us. Thank
you. Charlene, I don't know, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, back to you, Karina.
Okay, great. So I have another question to ask. So what are some ways to kind of start these conversations about LGBTQ workplace inclusion among different employees, and colleagues that might be less familiar or less inclined to want to have the conversations?
I don't think we can, force someone to talk about LGBTQ or any of the topics that people are sensitive about. But I think speaking from a personal level, right? And this happens a lot in companies. We talk and say, oh, what are you doing over, what did you do over the weekend? Did you take your kids out? Did you, where did you go with your husband? And I've learned that if we start by saying, oh yeah, I went out with my partner, and then they say, oh, who is he? And then I say, well, it's she, right? So you will get that awkward 1 second moment, and then curiosity will start to kick in. For me, that is, I think, one of the, I wouldn't say it's easy, because I would still feel a little bit awkward, and my colleagues will also feel a little bit awkward, but it's that easy as in it's a conversation that someone can jump right into, and then they'll be asking other questions, finding out more. And if colleagues who already know about what LGBTQ means, what the community, who is in the community, then they will be able to carry on the conversation more comfortably. But this actually starts getting people thinking about it. So if you can have one conversation with 3 people, and you can imagine 3 people can have more conversations with 3 other people, and it multiplies. So I think this is called grassroots level, starting the conversation grassroots level.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share one of my personal stories. So ever since we launched the ERG here in China, and then because every June we'll send out the June Pride Month engagement letter, and then the whole month was all about the LGBT plus Pride. And after more than 7 years, one of my coworkers, once we were walking to the substation, because we work very closely, and then he suddenly raised the question, oh, are you married? So I want to introduce you to a girl. I asked him, do you know that every month, every June, that there is an email newsletter sending out celebrating LGBT Pride? I am always on the email. I'm the liaison. I'm the person who really wants to talk to LGBT related issue. Oh, I suppose that you are doing it on your personal interest, that something like that. You totally personal interest or something. So no, I'm gay, and this is something really interesting. People have the assumptions. So we all and that from that moment on, I know that even we have all the newsletters every June. People always have assumptions. So now I have every time I carry a bag to the office, I always make sure to put a pin on it, says I'm gay. It's something like you can sometimes people like they tend to not talk about it, or sometimes they have their assumptions. To make sure you are same, make sure you are same, and it is from the grassroots level. Make sure you are seen, like the LGBT is around you, and you need to deal with it.
Maybe it's also a way they're asking in a reverse mode way, right? It's like, oh, we think you need a girlfriend, and okay, now that you've come out to me, okay, my previous assumptions have been confirmed. Instead of asking you, hey Jimmy, are you gay? You know, so maybe it's another way of asking the question.
Yeah.
Without being too direct. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to share a little bit about other people's story, because I work in an LGBT organization. So like in my workplace, it's like everything's gay. So I have a lot of, I've heard so many beautiful stories about like how people are starting things at a grassroots level. So many people, they start from, like, as you mentioned, like coming out to the people in their workplace. And also some people, they although they are still very young in their workplace, they still want to try to do something. And it's really inspiring to see them sometimes start from an ERG, maybe just start from a regular dinner or drink with some of the other LGBT colleagues or allies, and then become an ERG. And then they sometimes they just then make it more official, and then they push for policies, push for gender neutral toilet. It's really beautiful to see all that. And usually we see from different cases that when a company changes, usually it's because of one or a few people who are there, either LGBT people, like they are like LGBTQ like people, or like allies, and then allies are also LGBTQ, sorry. So they, for example, if someone, they take up the courage and they apply for example, marriage leave, then that might have the power of changing the whole policy in that company. If the headquarters actually had that policy, but at the local level it's never implemented, but in principle it works in China as well. If they apply for that, then it set up a precedent, and then in the future everyone can do that. So that the power of one individual is like immense. So I just want to mention that, and hope that everyone can do this. And more people can come out in their workplace.
I also want to point out something which I overheard last week, right? About job fair, because we had a Pride job fair last week, and there was one company, I know this person very well, and he was saying that, oh, why do you specifically need a Pride job fair? Like, are you trying to out employees, LGBTQ employees in the workforce? So he said, oh, I'm not going to join it because, it seems like you just want LGBTQ employees. But on the contrary, I think that's also a misconception, right? It's not that we want to have LGBTQ employees join a corporation. It's more of showing that the companies are inclusive, regardless of gender, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of age, right? So if you have that, if the company has that as you can call it a marketing tool or branding tool, then more employees, whether they're LGBTQ or not, they'll probably be more willing to join a company that says, oh, you embrace diversity and therefore you care about your employees. I want to be part of that company. So in some ways, sometimes we probably hear that maybe Jimmy or Nain, you might hear about this too. Some companies say, oh, I don't want to be brand as an LGBTQ employer. But I think for us, at least from my standpoint, is it's not about branding yourself an LGBTQ employer. It's more about you being a caring employer and a more inclusive employer. I know we're using this word inclusion and diversity a lot, but that's what it is.
And also, I really want to echo Shalene. So, a lot of companies like nowadays and entering your participating in the Shanghai Pride LGBT job fair in Shanghai, and I to be honest, I don't know how many staff that were recruited during that session, but through that session, a lot of people are hiding in the dark and with their skin on with their now cover on the LGBT people. They know that there are companies that care about these care about us. So I can join from other channels. At least I know that I can have I can work for an organization who really cares about us. So it's really a branding tool. It's really sort of like a marketing tool to show your position there.
Oh, actually, I have it's actually a very good ending to what I just shared earlier. So this friend of mine, his company, he didn't want to join in the beginning, so he joined, right, as an employer. And guess what? He signed someone from the job fair.
Yeah, we got too.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on the job fair.
Thank you.
Was there something else you wanted to add, Charlene?
No, that was my point.
Great. So I'm going to move on to kind of our final question before we open it up to the audience for additional audience questions. But what roles can ERGs or employee resource groups play in this work, and what roles can allies play? I know previously we kind of talked about how to combine different ERGs and how to talk about these issues through an intersectional lens. So I'd love to hear a little bit about each of you. What roles do you think these ERGs can play?
You know, first of all, it's very difficult, or at least from my experience here in China, it's very difficult to create ERGs for LGBTQ. It's much easier for gender diversity. But even then, some companies, they are not willing to take that first step, right? That bold step. But ERGs really help a lot. What we normally hear of is you start off with, and this has to do with being allies, right? Start an ERG consisting of allies first. And then, you know, when employees look at it and say, oh, okay, you have something for me, I might be part of it. And some allies later on, they come out as LGBTQ. So it's really step by step, but that first step, that one bold step has to be made. Yeah. I'm sure you have a question about allies, and we'll talk about that later.
Well, I really need to echo Shalene on that, because well, a few years back there might be better, but especially nowadays it's even difficult than before. So always trying to include every aspect in the same ERG. So we used to have the LGBT ERG, and then we changed to LGBT. A as not as asexual, A as in ally. So we want to include everyone inside the ERG and hide the identity, because we want to we want to emphasize the differences, but we want to actually eliminate all the differences by emphasizing the differences. So we change our acronym to LGBT plus including everyone. And so we make the approach that and the first year we used the acronym. I just asked all my team members to join in, and then the ERG, because it's not like it's only talk about the LGBT related issues, but it includes everyone. So that as long as you want to be part of it. So that also help to raise a lot of concerns of the LGBT employees. So it's really a better approach nowadays. And slowly, step by step, slowly there might be more people joining in, like claiming that, converting to the ally, to the claim that they are not an ally and actually they are an LGBT employee.
Yeah, agree. And also because of all this, the allies are really important. Sometimes when the LGBT people, they are in a company, they are in a workplace, they are more worried about, I've seen that in the question part, someone asked about whether there are ways to help employees from like to avoid repercussions, but usually the kind of labor relation here in China, I think the work culture here in China is so much more difficult for people if anything actually happens. So many people are really afraid. They are afraid that their career will be ruined. So LGBT people, they're really afraid to come out. According to a research we've done with UNDP and Peking University in 2016, with over 30,000 samples to understand the situation of LGBT people in China, actually only 5% of the samples, they came out in their workplace. So that can show us how like afraid, like how the environment is from the data. So that's why if sometimes there are discrimination or harassment in the workplace for LGBT people, if the allies speak out, it really helps. As LGBT people, sometimes it's much more difficult for people to just step forward and just say something. But if ally helps, that is really like important. So yeah, just to mention that.
I think, Karina, your next question will be about allies, right? So can we just jump into that? I want to say
Yes,
something about
please,
allyship.
please. Please, jump
over
right
the
in.
past, over the past weekend, also I saw many allies actually stepping up to the stage to talk about being an ally and to talk about how they met their first met the topic of LGBTQ, right? And then it occurred to us that, you know, we don't talk about allies that much. Actually, they are a very important part of being LGBTQ. Jimmy is right? The A for ally should be part of this whole LGBT, and now we say plus. Maybe we should focus on a few things about how to be an ally. What is an ally? Because some people don't know, oh, just because I'm your friend doesn't mean I'm your ally, right? I do have friends who say, oh, Charlene, I like you as a friend, but I don't agree with you being gay. I saw over the weekend a spectrum of, you know, how ally are you an ally? It's like, which part on allyship are you at, from this part to the, you know, the whole spectrum? Maybe we can focus more on that, right? Because this is so important, being an ally. And we have a lot of questions about, you know, how can people, employees be more supportive? How can bosses be more supportive? Management be more supportive? And that is being part of being allies. So yeah, that was my point about ally, and I know you have specific questions about that.
Definitely. And I think maybe kind of like the bigger one that I was kind of thinking of, kind of based on what everyone's been saying, is how do we encourage allies, particularly those that are in leadership and do hold positions of power? Like, how do we encourage them to take that bold step in like becoming like a more visible ally and becoming a better ally?
Or my personal experience, is especially someone who works for the HR department, and because it's their job, and if they do believe in that, and it really helps a lot. And I had experience with some another MNC who only got her assignment here in Beijing for a year, and that year she's been talking because she's such a strong ally. She reached out to me from some people in the States, and then we started talking about that. We talked about we talk with each other from time to time, and she always she told me, I don't care what the management here says. I just want to mention it every time when I see them, because she got the responsibility. She believed in the diversity inclusion. So she wants to bring up the idea all the time. So she make the strong move, and then after a few times, finally local management said, okay, if you are so insistent doing that, give me a better approach so that we can adopt the some related policies. So the ally really plays important, and try to find the correct light from the from a management team or someone in a position who have the influence to others.
And Nang, did you have anything to add? I also want to make sure we get to some of the audience questions.
Yeah, I think Jimmy's story is perfect.
Great. So here's kind of the first a question. So the question says, I am in the US, United States, helping to manage a global ERG for LGBTQ employees. What all can we do in the United States to best support employees that are joining in China?
I think for we used to be in this. I used to be in this position before, and you know, sometimes, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Sometimes in the U.S. we can do so many things, but then when it comes to maybe Asia, in China, we cannot do a lot of things. The key is don't give up. You know, I'm sure we can find that one or two people in the organization locally to help push this, to help build an ERG, or to you know, subsequently make policies more inclusive. When I joined my previous company, that was how it happened, right? A lot of the ERGs came from globally, but it took a few of us locally to start, you know, getting allies and just having informal gatherings, like or informal networking sessions after work, to build that momentum and to find supporters. So actually, in the beginning, everybody came out as allies. But then later on, half of the people who came out as allies at the networking session, they actually came out. So, like you say, it's cliche, but it takes a spark, right? And I think a lot of communication is required here, because we don't know, because globally we're probably far away, and then you don't know who is in the who is based here that you can reach out to. So communication is very important. Sometimes also it takes an employee to say, hey, you know, I want to start an ERG. You just need to find the person. Maybe in hiring policies, when you hire someone, maybe there should be a question that says, are you inclusive? You know, or I don't know if that is allowed, but to be able to find some people who are in that space, I think we have to sometimes do it more direct way. Like, Nai or Jimmy, do you have anything to add to that? I think maybe Jimmy also has some ideas.
Well, I from my perspective, I was lucky because I saw that LGBT index. But after that, we had a lot of discussion how to promote the awareness, because awareness is always the first step. And then the first step we did is to just get approval to change our recruiting ad, specifically mentioning the LGBT inclusion there. And also from every perspective, we want to just broadcasting and try to advertising ourselves at the LGBT inclusive workplace. So every time we need to we need to get this message out. So that's why every time like inside the company and working with Shanghai Pride, with the Beijing LGBT Center, with anyone who had the need, and we will always want to be in the position, be at the scene, so that people know that as a company, as a corporation, we are inclusive. So as long as the words are out, and then people are really, to be honest, I'll have to share with you, even with all the work done, we don't have a lot of members came out as a LGBT employees in the ERG. But a lot of people, join as allies. But I know some of them are LGBT members, because they specifically reach out to me and sending like a private emails talking like they are one of our community, but they don't want to really come out, and that's okay, because what our purpose is not like trying to there's a benchmark saying that, oh, this is our numbers, how many employees are out. What our purpose is: create the environment, create the inclusive workplace. Nain, you have something to add?
Yeah. And also, like, first of all, I really want to thank Randy for bringing this up. Thank you for your enthusiasm. And for the employees in China, as Charlene and Jimmy has mentioned, the kind of support really depends sometimes on the context as well, the different corporate cultures of the company, like how developed is that ERG, and that changes a lot. But overall, I think the core message is the same. It's like, if it's possible to connect with the local community is important, because according to my work in the past year, sometimes the people who are in their ERG, or who are not even in the ERG, they might, if we go there and do something, actually it doesn't really matter what we do there. And then they know us, they got our WeChat number, and then they follow the center, Beijing LGBT Center's account, and then they come to the LGBT Center's event outside of their work. That's much safer for them, and for them to build up that confidence, to build up that support network outside of that workplace, which is very uncertain for them, and then coming back to the workplace, and they can potentially become the internal advocate. And as Charlene and Jimmy has mentioned, the internal advocates are the key. If there is one of them, it will change everything. So we also need to nurture them, like in that process, like from finding them, like getting them in the company, finding a network for them, giving them other resources and connections, and let them become confident and eventually become that advocate in the company.
Great. Thank you all so much for your answers. I guess I want to be conscious also of everyone's time. So if everyone wanted to just take a little bit of time to maybe say a few words, just kind of closing on reflection of today's conversation that we've had today, that would be great.
Yeah. So for me, it's making an impact require everybody from community, from society, from families, even, and schools, companies, and companies play a big role in D&I, in being inclusive to LGBTQ people. because we spend most of our adult working life at work. It's so important that we all feel safe and as part of a family, and we feel that our employers are taking care of us. So it might seem trivial to many people, but this is something that could affect our thinking, our mental, our work, our productivity. So all I want to say is companies do play a very big role. So if you can do all you can to create a more inclusive environment for everybody, please do so. And don't be afraid to take that first bold step.
From my perspective, I will emphasize like two. One is like together we are stronger. So you have the resources like now, like today, out in Eco Shanghai Pride and Beijing LPC Center, you have all the resources, and reach out to the resources, and trying to build a big community, LGBT community. And do that if you can do that. And the second is like don't be afraid to make to step like a little by little. Sometimes, not sometimes, all the time. Even baby step matters. Just do step out. That even it's not like a bold step, but even a really baby step, you need to step it. You need to step it.
Yeah, and I want to say to everyone that, especially in the context of China, business really matters. Like for LGBT to LGBT, not only DNI, but the movement to go forward. I think in China, the private sector will play a significant role. And this is why we really need all of you to come to join us and to do this together, because maybe this is a historic moment. Who knows? Joining us now, maybe we will make a new era together. So yeah, just that.
Great. Well, first off, thank you all to the panelists for joining me today, and thank you so much for your incredible insight. And I also want to thank you, all of our viewers and our attendees, for joining and for all of your questions and comments. And as a reminder, this session was recorded and will be available for you to watch and for you to share with others if you'd like. And thanks again. I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.